The interviewer's job is to predict the job performance of each applicant, which allows them to offer the most suitable person the advertised job role. The idea is that it's a structured job interview where you ask the same questions to each applicant, analysing their answers against the criteria on the interview scorecard. It should be a purely analytical process, but we know this isn't true. Unconscious bias plays a big part in the decision-making process of all employers. Unconscious bias can start prior to meeting the applicant through the halo or horns effect. An applicant's social media feed, their application form or CV, or even the opinions of other people in the sector and organisation can influence the employer's opinion of that applicant. As the interview goes downstairs to meet the applicant in the reception area, they'll make an instantaneous opinion about that person based on a number of different stimuluses. This could be the person's height, body mass, their gender, their age, their skin colour. It could be a number of different unconscious biases that affect that initial opinion that is created in milliseconds of meeting that person. So that's a general emotional feeling. I like that person, or I don't like that person, or they're suitable for this role, or they wouldn't be suitable for this particular role. In the job interview itself though, you'll be asked around 8 to 10 interview questions, and if the applicant can communicate their competencies confidently, they should create a job interview identity that is one of being, optimistic or charismatic or self-assured, where if you show that you got a high level of knowledge and experience but your interview confidence level is low, you won't communicate those competencies to the right effect that will give you high scoring answers. Or if you're highly confident but you got no knowledge and experiences, the employer will initially like you because rapport will be very strong, but because it's a analytical job interview process, they'll soon realise that you don't have the experience, skills or qualities required for that position. Sometimes you can be so confident and oversell yourself that when the employer realises that you don't have the skills that you say you have, you can come across as being insincere or dishonest. I often find when working with clients who are highly experienced, who lack confidence, is they're seen by employers as being unresponsive or bored in the job interview, because the employer reading your application form knows that you got 10 years experience or degrees and qualifications that are relevant to your sector, so you should know what you're talking about. You should have long descriptive answers, you should have great examples because of your duration in the industry. But if you're not communicating then during the interview, or your answers are short and snappy, the employer's thinking, why have you come here? Like, what, you're a little bit indifferent, you're a little bit aloof. Do you not want this job? So it's the applicants who have a high level of knowledge and experience, or are perceived to have that high level of knowledge and experience, and a high level of confidence so they can communicate that knowledge and experience, are the ones that are often successful in the job interview. The interview will often start with the employer telling you a little about their organisation and their company, and this is where you can start to create that interview identity by doing some confident traits that confident applicants would do, smiling, nodding along, encouraging the employer, but also asking questions at suitable moments. The interview identity is mainly created though during the first job interview question, with the most commonly asked first question being, tell me a little bit about yourself, or why have you applied for this job role? It's in this job interview answer where you need to deliver an impactful answer that highlights your level of knowledge and experience within that sector, while talking with confidence and communicating with confidence, so they can see that you're a self-assured, confident individual, because that's the sort of person we like to recruit, because we know they'll do well in the culture of the organisation. So it's this split between your perceived level of knowledge and experience and your perceived level of confidence that creates the interview identity. And that identity then becomes the main filter throughout the rest of the job interview. If you come across as someone who's self-assured, then the employer is going to listen to all your answers through that self-assured filter. Where if you come across as someone who is lacking in enough experience. The employers are going to want the interview to end as soon as possible. You got to remember, employers that are interviewing normally back to back all day for several days. They can often get tired, stressed, or even bored with the job interview process. If they think someone's really suitable and then you come along and you're not suitable, they kind of turn off knowing that you're not going to be offered that position. So you need to turn the employer on, you need to get them excited about you, you need to create intrigue and get the employer to understand what you can bring to the team, what you can offer, what is your unique selling point. There are 16 job interview identities. In the book, What is Your Job Interview Identity? We can get on Amazon. It goes through in loads of details. You can take a test. Each of the 16 identities has a description where it's an overview of the character, the strengths of that character, the areas of development, and what that person can do within the job interview to get higher scoring answers. What you have to remember as well, this is how the employer perceives you in the job interview. So as an example, if you're a confident and competent person once you're employed, so in the workplace, you work at a high level and you're very confident in that job role, then that is completely different to how you may come across in the job interview itself. In the job interview, you may be nervous, you may be anxious, you might not be prepared enough, you might be feeling the pressure and the stress, and that might make you come across as having less experience or being less confident. So in the workplace, you might be self-assured and charismatic, but in the job interview, you might come across as unprofessional or indifferent. One way to kind of work out where you would generally fit on that is by thinking about the amount of experience you have in the industry. So do you have no experience, or just a couple of years, or do you have like 5, 6, 10 years experience, or 10 years plus experience? The more experience you get, the higher up that axis you will be, because you'll naturally use industry jargon, you'll naturally be able to respond to situational interview questions, because you've probably been there and done that if you have a lot of experience. You can also think about your academic ability, your qualification level, because if you've got relevant qualifications, you can probably talk about the sector models and theories relevant to the job role that you're applying for. And again, that just shows that you've got the knowledge or experience to start that job and require little support. You can kind of get on with that job as soon as you are offered the position. The second thing is to look at your self-worth, because people who have a negative view of their own abilities and lack self-appreciation often disclose weaknesses during a job interview. Whereas someone who's highly confident and highly self-assured will be a self-promoter, they'll be aware of their expertise, and they'll demand to be treated with authority and respect during that interview process. And the way you communicate as well is massively important in the job interview. Nervous people will use excessive filler words, will mumble, will use short sentences and hesitate. They'll have like a low volume, and they just won't be very clear with their communication. Compared to someone who speaks with authority and presents ideas in a structural way, using vocal variety to maintain interest. Confident people can debate subjects and express their own ideas, and they're able to influence other people, i.e. the interviewer, to take on their points of view using logic and reasoning to overcome barriers to objection. So what you need to be thinking about is your level of sector knowledge and experience, and does that come across in the job interview? And your level of confidence is, are you a self-promoter? Are you confident in your communication? Do you express yourself and influence people to understand your ideas? The first thing to do is to pause this video. When you pause this video, I want you to look and read each of these questions. These are interview reflection questions. I want you to think back to the last 3 or 4 job interviews you went to, not just the last one, the last 3 or 4 job interviews you went to, and then answer these questions for each of those job interviews. What you're looking for when you answer these questions is any commonality, like do you always self-disclose weaknesses? Do you always answer a certain question wrong? Or are you very good at answering a particular question or being a self-promoter during a certain part of the job interview? So I want you to go through each of these questions, which are: how did you showcase your strengths? Which questions did you answer well? In what way did you actively self-promote? Which questions were you less confident at answering? How did you self-disclose weaknesses? What do you need to do to improve your interview performance? So think back to the last 3 or 4 job interviews and answer each of those 6 questions for each of the job interviews. At the end of doing that exercise, I want you to circle all the commonalities, so all the common strengths and all the common areas of development. And it's always in reflection that we can learn to improve. If you have one of the negative interview identities, you need to work on developing your skills to be a positive person in that job interview. One of the biggest mistakes most people make is self-disclosing weaknesses. Even when people get asked a positively framed interview question, they'll often self-disclose weaknesses. It's ridiculous. Do not do that. You need to be 100% positive. You need to be a self-promoter. As an example, you might get asked a question that is positively framed. Tell me about one of your successes. Now, I've heard people being asked this question and they self-disclose a weakness. They might say something like, well, I've worked on loads of different projects in the past, but they've not all been successful. Like, don't say that. You need to be talking about your strengths, your ability to achieve goals, your unique selling point. What is it that you're going to bring to this new organization, this new team? What we also find with people who have the weaker interview identities is they have short, snappy answers. So one way to overcome this is to have a structure to your interview question. And an easy structure is have an opening, a middle, and an end. One way to do that is by starting with a confirmation statement. So you tell the employer that you have whatever skill or experience they're looking for. So as an example, if you're asked, are you a team player? You say, yes, in all my previous roles I've worked as part of a team. So you confirm that you have that skill or that experience. Maybe the question will be something like, do you have any experience working with stakeholders? And you can say, yes, one of my key strengths is being able to not only work with stakeholders, but influence stakeholders so they take on the ideas of the organisation so we can collectively achieve the project objective. So whatever you're asked, you need to confirm in the first sentence that you have that skill or that experience. The second part of the interview answer is giving an example. So an example of working with stakeholders or an example of working within a team is, and then you go into the details of that example. In the details of that example, you can break it down into 3 points. One is the situation, the goal or the problem that you was facing. 2 is the actions you took as an individual to achieve that goal or overcome that barrier. And then thirdly, you need to summarize that whole interview answer. So you can summarize by saying, so as you can see, I have the collaborative skills to work with stakeholders at multiple levels. Or as you can see, my ability to communicate and listen makes me an ideal team player. So you have an opening where you confirm you have the skill, you give an example, and then you summarize that you have the skills required for that particular experience. Rule 1 of a successful job interview is so important, identifying the job criteria. If you don't understand the values of the organisation, if you don't understand the company mission, the duties and the required skills that you need for that position, you're going to end up giving, even if you're confident, long answers that are irrelevant to that particular job role. What is really important is to understand the job criteria so all your answers are relevant to that position. Now you might think, because you're applying for lots of jobs, it's going to be really hard to keep thinking of new examples, new stories to tell during those different interviews. One great technique to use is to pick 5 different stories, 5 examples, and you can learn and practice those examples. So when you're in the job interview and you get asked a question that's relevant to that example, you can then give a well-rehearsed interview answer, which often ends up being a high-scoring interview answer. But if you get asked a second question in a second interview and it's not relevant to the message of the first example you've been practicing, what you can do is just reframe that interview answer. So as an example, if your interview answer is all about helping a customer overcome a problem, but you're being asked about listening skills, you can use the same interview answer, so the same example, the story, but instead of focusing on the customer complaint, you can focus on being a good listener and being a good communicator. So really, you only need 5 generic examples And for each example, you can have 3 or 4 different hidden messages or different frames. So depending on what you're asked, you can use the same well-rehearsed example, but focus the message, the skill that the employer requires differently for each particular job interview. We also found, and we talked about this so many times during the courses, smiling makes you look more confident, varying your projection and your volume, and having like emotive words, and the use of pauses as well during the interview answers is a really good, powerful way to show that you're a self-assured and self-confident individual. So you need to communicate with confidence, you need to be a self-promoter, and you do those 2 things by identifying the job criteria. This is the end of part 4 of the job interview course. In this part you'll learn about job interview identities, which are created during the initial interview questions, and they're obviously influenced by unconscious bias. What you need to be doing to be successful in a job interview is always reflecting on your previous interview performances, what you do well, which areas of the interview you struggle with, which questions you answer in a very professional and confident manner, and which answers always sound weak. Also look out for all the individual negative and positive traits that you use during the job interview. Often anxious people have a lack of eye contact, they lip bite, they have constant nervous body shifts. This all indicates anxiety. Tonality, volume, speed, diction, the number of words per answer, the use of filler words or pauses, a sign picked up by the subconscious mind of the employer. Interestingly though, even though employers do notice anxiety, research shows that the interviewees believe that their low level of confidence is more obvious than it is. When anxiety is detected, even subconsciously, the result can be low scoring interview answers. So this means that your anxiety isn't perceived as negatively as you think it is, but when it is picked up, it does reduce the scoring marks that you will receive in each interview answer. So what you need to do is learn how to be more confident, and what we're going to do later on in this course is teach you some techniques to reduce that fear and that anxiety, and to increase that internal confidence that will allow you to be more charismatic in the job interview.